Hi everyone, Johnny Virgil here with Rhyme Signatures, the nerdiest music review this side of having annoying voicemails left to you all the time by Mel from Megalophone. And today we're going to be doing a review of the classic Kevin Gilbert album, The Shaming of the True. So welcome once again, one and all beloved viewers and listeners, to my Classics series, where I like to get some of my thoughts out on albums that have shaped me not only musically, but from a very personal level. These classic albums I'll be looking at over the coming months are going to be ones that are honestly so much more to me than just a sequence of songs. The point of these videos, though, isn't really to review the album from a traditional sense, but more to kind of analyse just how this album has made me feel, what it really means to me, and how it really helped to shape what I consider to be my core musical identity. So, with that being said, let's continue. One of the more popular narratives in prog rock concept albums tends to be that of the hero's journey. The idea of a downtrodden, outcast protagonist going through a grueling series of challenges in their lives, while their very exceptional circumstances make for an intriguing and sometimes curiously relatable tale. Now, we've seen this a whole bunch of times, with some notable examples including The Who's Tommy and Spock's Beard's Snow. But for me, this guy right here, no other concept album has dealt with this narrative structure better than the late Kevin Gilbert's The Shaming of the True. Gilbert was a tragic loss who sadly only reached the age of 29 before passing away due to death by misadventure. His legacy is niche but robust, but honestly that's kind of a real shame to me, as what he did create in his short time on this earth was nothing less than outstanding, and The Shaming of the True was his crowning achievement, and for me, is one of the finest examples of progressive rock ever made. So, as we've kind of touched on already, this is a very recognisable template to anyone who's familiar with albums like Tommy or Snow. But Shaming is a markedly more cynical record than both of these, with some truly scathing lyrics about the state of the music industry that still seem to hold significant weight even now, more than 20 years after the album's initial release. I first had this record come to my attention through, of all things, Devin Townsend. A few years ago, he was playing a bunch of these kind of niche tunes that he really liked on this podcast that he was doing, and he included things like, Cardiacs and other such weird and wonderful stuff. And I can kind of remember it quite vividly. It was this a cappella track, the Suit Fugue Dance of the A&R Men, that he had played on this podcast, and I just loved this brash and cynical lyricism about this young musician being poached by these massive record labels who clearly don't actually give a toss about the person and only really wanted them for their, ability to make lots of money. It reminded me also of like a stage musical version of Pink Floyd's classic Have a Cigar, and the energy it carried made me, suitably intrigued to want to check out the rest of the album. But it was a pretty difficult one to track down, though, given Gilbert's niche presence within the industry and his unfortunate passing. It kind of meant that only snippets of the music were available online, because this was quite a while back before, it was easy to find this sort of stuff. And the physical copies were selling for literally hundreds of pounds on resale websites. Nevertheless, I listened to what I could find, and honestly loved it, but I had to resign myself to the fact that I was unlikely to ever really hear the full recording. Then, one chilly winter afternoon many years back, I had an email from his mailing list that I had subscribed to. Now, my memory is a little bit fuzzy, so this might be a little bit embellished, but, it advised that they had basically found a stack of jewel case copies of the album in an attic somewhere, and they were basically being made available for sale. Hooray! Now, I obviously clicked buy immediately, as this record was fast becoming my sodding white whale, the album that I couldn't have but desperately needed. A couple of weeks passed by, and postman's knock, hooray! Here we go, I finally had my forbidden treasure, and I could finally uncover the whole story. Now, I was enthralled from the very opening seconds of Parade to the dying embers of Johnny's last song. I hadn't heard anything quite like this in some time. Gilbert's vocals were this gruff and masculine, with an embittered sense of betrayal undercutting the spitting of every frustrated line. It genuinely felt as he was just sort of method acting the part of lead character Johnny Virgil, as I really felt drawn into the world and story crafted throughout the album. The instrumentation was bold, decisive, and intensely creative, with musical and lyrical passages popping out to me every 30 seconds or so, each one demanding my attention more than the last. Be it the dramatic, triumphant-sounding keyboard stings from The City of the Sun, the deeply disturbing narrative undercutting certifiable #1 smash, or the intense, harrowing violence of The Ghetto of Beautiful Things. This album had personality in spades. Now, this is a heavy record, and I don't mean heavy in like a metal sense. I mean it in a lyrical and atmospheric one. Gilbert often sounds furious, defeated, and morose throughout the recording, embodying the soul of a character who just wants to play music, but is brutalised by the eternal hunger of an industry keen to suck him dry of any and all profit-boosting potential that he might have. It's honestly easy to feel a little overwhelmed by this record, as this is not a happy recording. The blood of cynicism runs freely throughout every single second, but for me this is what makes this such a memorable and unabashed classic. It feels free of restraint or restriction, reflecting the truest and most genuine feelings of an artist with a statement to make. There are motifs and passages on this record that still shock and thrill me even to this day, after I've listened to it dozens, if not scores of times. The Shaming of the True is one of the few albums that I consider to be perfectly crafted, in a sense of being truly full and realised. There is not a moment on this record that feels throwaway or wasted. Even the slower sections, they serve this great purpose to help radiate and ooze the dirty atmosphere throughout, of a dark critique on an industry built on parasitic relationships with its artists. And I think that's what really resonates with me the most on this album, is how unafraid it is. A lot of artists fall into line behind their coin masters and do as they're told throughout their career, and The Shaming of the True feels like one of the most defiant records ever made in that respect. Gilbert is clearly mad as hell, and painting what is most assuredly a less than favourable picture of the industry, but yet he still manages to do this whilst never sacrificing his musical creativity and superb songwriting. The record manages to find still some moments of sullen beauty throughout this anger. There's always that undercurrent of acidity to everything on this album though, but the structure beneath everything is rock solid, and the quieter, more introspective moments on this album really do shine beautifully, and they serve as these very necessary palate cleansers between the vitriol and frustration. Now, I'm not going to try and pretend otherwise. I do consider myself something of a cynical person in real life, so it was perhaps no surprise that this record really spoke to me as strongly as it did. Now, I don't want to get too much into my personal life, but I've been burnt many a time by many an industry, and some of the cautionary tales on this album have rung true within my own life, serving only really to strengthen my connection to the lyricism and poetry that Gilbert has filled this recording with. I mean, sure, yeah, okay, I've never worked in the music industry, but who here can honestly say they've never worked for any company or business who's not treated talent and vision with opportunistic greed and disposability? In a lot of ways, this record and its message has only become more and more relevant as time has gone on. In a world where quiet quitting has become one of the buzzwords du jour, it's no surprise that an album constructed on a bedrock of anger towards an industry that treats its content creators so poorly has only gained in relevancy. Now, I don't want to become too political with my thoughts and feelings here, but Gilbert has left us with something that feels so contemporary and relevant even now, over 20 years after its release. The Shaming of the True is a cathartic album to listen to, filling a void within my grumpy old heart that just really just wants to get mad at the world and the system. It's hard not to feel sympathy for lead character Johnny Virgil, as his meteoric rise to fame is reflected only by how quickly he is discarded once the industry has taken everything they wanted from him, leaving him empty, forgotten, and irrelevant to their world. Honestly, I tend to only really listen to this album once in a while, as it isn't something I can just have playing on in the background. I have to be in a certain mood for it, but when that mood strikes, there is literally nothing else that can scratch that desire. This is a record for a very specific purpose for me, but with how profound of an impact it has left on me over the years, I cannot consider this anything less than a true genre classic, and one that deserves to be listened to by everyone at least once. So, what else can I say about The Shaming of the True? This is undoubtedly Gilbert's finest hour, and it is a real blow that we will never know what he might have come up with next. It does feel in some ways that this might very well have been his final album regardless of the unfortunate circumstances of his passing. But speculation aside, it is a masterpiece of progressive music. From the instrumentation and bold creativity throughout, to the cynical and darkly comic lyrics, The Shaming of the True stands tall amongst a crowded forest of concept albums as one of the absolute best records that nearly no one has ever heard. So I implore you, do yourself a favour, track this one down somehow, and give it a distraction-free listen all the way through. Might make you angry, might make you sad, it might make you self-reflective and bitter, and it might make you long for this world to be better and kinder to its artists. But whatever it makes you feel, I sincerely hope it makes you see why this album, to me, is an unassailable classic. This is all, of course, just my opinion, as you guys know, so if you have listened to this, I would love to know what you thought about it, so drop a comment down below to let me hear about it. If you've got anything else this year that you think I should check out, any other classics that you really love, that you think maybe I think the same way about, drop a comment down there, maybe I feel the same way about them. If you did like this video, please do share it around your circles with anyone who you think would enjoy it. Please do consider thumbing it up as well for my metrics. And as always, guys, please do consider subscribing for some more content. And until next time, keep your rhyme signatures odd.